Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to be covering a section from Cambridge IGCSE Biology, the topic of organization of an organism and subtopic cell structure. Now, with regard to cells, we've learned that all living organisms are made up of cells, right? There are some simpler organisms who are made up of just one cell, and these are called the unicellular organisms. And there are the more complex organisms whose body is made up of thousands and millions of cells, who are referred to as the multicellular organisms. So we've understood that a cell is extremely small, right? So if you want to see a cell, you can't see a cell with your naked eye. You'd have to use a microscope for that. And typically there are two main types of microscope, the light microscope and the electron microscope. So if you happen to take an animal cell, and if you happen to observe it under a light microscope, this is what you see as an animal cell. So let's analyze this animal cell. If you look at this diagram of the animal cell, the first thing you would notice is that there is this thin layer running around the animal cell, right? A thin layer called the cell membrane that envelops the animal cell. And the next thing you should notice is that the inside of the cell, you see the inside of the cell, if you observe it under the microscope, you see it's filled up with a gel-like substance. This gel-like substance is called the cytoplasm. And within the cell, there's this distinct structure over here. This is called the nucleus. And there are other structures as well present within the cytoplasm. One of these structures is the mitochondria. So this is what an animal cell looks like when it's viewed under a light microscope. And now let's understand what these different structures are and what these different structures do. So I'm going to make a quick drawing over here of an animal cell. Like we saw in the previous slide, the animal cell is covered by a cell membrane. And then within the animal cell, there is a gel-like substance that fills it up, which is called the cytoplasm. And then there is this distinct, prominent organelle over here, which is called the nucleus. And there are other structures within the cell, one of which is a mitochondrion. All right, so let's talk about these different structures. Now, if we start off, let's start off with the cell membrane. The cell membrane is a thin layer that runs around the entire cell, and the cell membrane controls what enters and leaves the cell. So basically, what the cell membrane does is, let's imagine there are a few molecules. I'm drawing a few molecules over here in different shapes for you to understand that there are different molecules, right? So there are these different molecules that are trying to enter into the cell. So the cell membrane can control what gets to enter the cell, and the cell membrane can prevent certain substances from entering the cell. So the cell membrane is involved with active transport, and it can control what enters the cell as well as what leaves the cell. So this property of only some molecules being allowed through is called selectively or partially permeable. So that's the job of the cell membrane, to control what enters and leaves the cell. All right. Now moving on to the next, the most prominent structure in this animal cell, which is the nucleus. Now the nucleus is actually one of the most important parts of the cell, because the nucleus is what holds all of our DNA. So all of our DNA is found within the nucleus, and we know that our DNA codes for proteins. And proteins, these proteins ultimately controls everything happening in this cell. So we say that the nucleus is the control center of the cell, because the DNA controls all the activities taking place in the cell. All right, then the next part of the cell is the cytoplasm. And like I mentioned earlier, the cytoplasm is this gel-like substance. So I want you to imagine that, like a jelly-like substance that fills up the inside of the cell. And this cytoplasm holds many different chemicals and substances. There are many things dissolved in this cytoplasm, and these chemicals are actively taking part in different cellular chemical reactions. So that's what the cytoplasm does. It facilitates all these cellular chemical reactions taking place. All right, then moving on to the next component, next structure, which is the mitochondrion. All right, so when talking about mitochondria, this is another very important structure of the cell. Important because the mitochondria is responsible for providing energy for the entire cell. So the energy required for all the cellular activities is generated by the mitochondria. So mitochondria carries out this process called aerobic respiration, and through this process, it is able to generate energy. So in this particular diagram over here, you see these different, I've drawn a couple of mitochondria here and there, right? So in this particular cell, although I've drawn just a few mitochondria, if there are any cells that are having a high rate of metabolism, you will see a significantly higher number of mitochondria with them, because the higher the number of mitochondria, the higher the amount of energy generated. So that's about the mitochondria. And then we come to the next structure called the ribosomes. Now, if you look at my diagram over here, I haven't really drawn or labeled anything called a ribosome. And that is because ribosomes are extremely tiny structures found within a cell. So it usually cannot be seen under a light microscope. So ribosomes are these tiny little structures found inside a cell, and ribosomes are where cells make their proteins. So that is the function of the ribosomes. They are the site of protein synthesis. And now that we're done with the ribosomes, we're just talking about one last structure called the vesicles. Now, when we consider the inside of a cell, there are some instances where certain things need to be transported within the cell, transported from one place to another place. And in those instances, it is these vesicles that are used to transport substances from one part of the cell to another. So these are the important structures. These are the important structures within the animal cell. I hope you all understood the function of all of these structures. So now that we've got a good understanding about the animal cell, I'm going to the same previous slide we saw earlier. And now that we've learned about the animal cell and what each structure does, we're going to move on to the plant cell. So this is what a plant cell looks like when viewed under a light microscope. What do we see in this plant cell? We can see that just like the animal cell, it has a cell membrane, it has a nucleus, it has the cytoplasm inside the cell, and it has structures such as the mitochondria. But in addition to the above structures, it also has structures such as the cell wall, the vacuole, and chloroplasts. So there are a few additional structures that are seen in this plant cell that were absent in the animal cell. So let's try to understand let's try to go into detail about these additional structures that are only seen in the plant cell. All right. So let's start off with the cell wall. All right. So before we go into detail about these three structures, I'm going to make a quick drawing of a plant cell. So here's my plant cell. And a plant cell has a structure, a thick wall called a cell wall, And underneath this cell wall is the cell membrane. And just like in the animal cell, the plant cell too has cytoplasm filling up the inside of the cell. It has a nucleus, just like in the animal cell. And in addition to the animal cell, in addition to the structures present in the animal cell, the plant cell has this pretty huge structure called the vacuole. And one more thing, it also has these green colored structures, these green colored organelles, which are called the chloroplasts. So these are the additional structures that are only found in plant cells. So let's talk about the cell wall. The cell wall is a thick wall that surrounds the plant cell, and it is made up of a substance called cellulose. So the cell wall supports the cell and strengthens the cell, and it allows the plant cell to be turgid. So that's what the cell wall does. And now let's talk about the vacuole. So the vacuole is this large organelle which contains a watery substance inside it called the cell sap. So the vacuole is responsible for storing water and sugars for the plant cell. All right, and then finally, we have this other organelle that I've drawn in green called the chloroplasts. The chloroplasts are actually green in color, and they are the organelles, they are the specialized organelle that carries out photosynthesis. So these are the additional three organelles and structures that are present only in the plant cell. So now that we've got a good understanding about the animal cell as well as the plant cell, let's take a side-by-side comparison of these two cells. So when we looked at the animal cell and the plant cell, both of them, the animal cell as well as the plant cell, contained the cell membrane. And they both had a nucleus. And they both have the cytoplasm within the cell. And they both also had mitochondria. Now, when we learned about the mitochondria, we learned that the function of the mitochondria is to carry out respiration and provide energy, right? So both animal cell as well as the plant cell carried out this process of respiration. And then we also learned about the structures, the cell wall, the vacuole, and the chloroplast. So these three structures, we saw that they were absent in the animal cell and they were only present in the plant cell. So that these are the most important things that you need to focus on: the cell wall, vacuole, and chloroplast, which are only present in the plant cell. And just one last thing I need to mention is that now animals do not have a vacuole, right? We've understood that animal cells do not have a vacuole, but sometimes there might be some animal cells who have temporary vacuoles. So temporary vacuoles might be present in animal cells as well as the plant cells. So this is what you need to know about the animal cells and the plant cells. Now that we've gone through this, let's try a few questions from the question bank. All right, so here's our first question, and this is actually a very easy question over here. A microscopic image of a couple of liver cells are shown. How many cell walls are visible in the image? So we know that liver cells are animal cells, and we know that animal cells do not have cell walls. So you can understand that the answer for this question is supposed to be zero cell walls, because animal cells do not have cell walls. All right, and let's try out one more question. The question here states that the diagram given below displays a plant cell. If a biologist wants to explore the contents of the cell, specifically to find the number of chromosomes, Which of the labeled organelles should be examined more closely? So if you ever want to know the number of chromosomes, where are these chromosomes located? We've learned that these chromosomes and the DNA are all located within the nucleus, which is shown by A. So that's our answer. The answer is A. So that's all for today's video. I hope all of you got a good understanding on this. Stay tuned for our next video.
Subscribe us now for more videos and content.